Little Decisions. Hello, and welcome to a Little Decisions interview. This is my interview with Wren K. I'm calling her Wren K because her last name is spelled Krupczak. You'll hear her say it in the interview, and she does a great job with it. I do not. So, here's my interview with Wren K. I hope you enjoy. And as always, pineapple with care, guys. Well, let's get started. So we're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about, but let's first have you introduce yourself, because the people on the podcast kind of know me, so why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Wren Krupczak. I graduated from UGA in 2020 with a PR degree, a minor in studio art, which was one of my favorite segments of it. I lived abroad for part of that, lived in Prague, Czech Republic, and was able to study food and beverage as well as open up an art gallery, so I got to focus on my photography, designed a food and beverage magazine too, called The Linen Wall, when I was out there. And now I sell liquor, and I live in Lawrenceville with my lovely partner, Richard Walker, who'd be so mad if I didn't say his name at least one time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the core thing is that I like to work hard, and I like to cook good food and make good drinks at night. That's kind of my thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, and I love that we've kept in touch. So I used to be your advisor.
Yes.
And we used to have the great conversations that went far beyond, like, what classes to take.
Oh, absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
I remember crying when I heard that you were not going to be at UGA anymore. I was a mess. Like,
Yeah.
no, you helped me through just navigating how to, like, become an adult.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, I genuinely miss that job, and I think that's part of what I want to bring here. Is like, so after I left UGA, I worked at a substance abuse facility for a little while. I worked there for about a year, and that's after my mom passed away.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult for me, but it was really cathartic too. But I figured out that how I want to work with people is not that way, because just like at UGA, I don't know if you realize, I took on too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I tend to do that.
It can be hard to separate what you hear from someone and the advice you give from, like, your personal life.
Yes.
It can be really hard.
Yes, it is. Yes, because I could give y'all all the advice and help y'all solve things all day long, and I loved doing that. I genuinely loved it. But when it came to me, no idea. And I would have just said the exact thing that I needed to hear, and I don't hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand that completely. I had a very bad habit of giving all these, like, speeches because I got to work with TEDx too and got to talk to a lot of people. And I gave this whole speech about first impressions and how they're always wrong. And then meanwhile, I am so focused on my first impression always, even though I just gave a whole speech about how they're wrong. Yeah. And, like, talk about body positivity, but then still can look in the mirror and hate everything.
I know.
So it can be so hard to remember that, like, whatever you're saying, you got to also listen to. But sometimes it takes that, like, random person saying it for it to click.
Yeah. Well, it's that. So it's that model of. I like the motto of teach what you need to learn. So that's what I'm trying to do here.
I love it.
I know. Isn't it fun?
It's exciting.
Yeah. So what do you want to talk about first? So and we can talk about anything. We just talked a minute ago about self-care.
Yeah.
So
I'm more than happy to start there if that sounds good to you.
Yeah. So how do you define self-care?
Well, as we talked about, self-care to me is so much more than just the bubble bath and candle mentality or, like, pour a glass of wine to relax. It definitely is that. I love doing that once a week.
Yeah.
But there's so many more elements to it. I think one of the biggest self-care things I ever did was my freshman year, actually, at college. All of my friends kind of got together and they're like, hey, we're not saying this to be rude, like, we don't want this to be stigmatized, but we do think you need to go see a therapist. Like, you've talked about wanting to do it, but you haven't been able to find the right one. Like, we'll drive you to your therapy sessions, we'll help you pay for it, whatever we need, but you need to start doing that. And that was, like, the biggest self-care thing I could have done, and then had to be re-given that conversation 5 years later.
Yeah.
Because during the pandemic, I kind of realized that the therapist I first started out with was good to get me into therapy, but wasn't necessarily helping me break down those trauma memories and kind of figure out what happened and actually improve upon them. So then being able to say, hey, like, thank you for your time, but I need to find someone else that's going to fit me in this chapter and moving on.
So it was trauma therapy?
A mixture of both. I've been to many different styles of therapy. The first one I did was with my therapist in Athens when I was in college. And it was kind of like getting over my college boyfriend that I dated for 3 months and thought I would never be able to get over. You know, the hardest thing about that. It's just so bad when you go on 4 dates and then can't get over them. Yeah. Which all relationships are valid, but I still laugh about stuff like that.
I know, me too.
And then working on body issue and then like kind of deconstructing my family history. Because, like, you know, I'm very grateful to all my parents and everything that happened, but, like, I was bullied heavily in school. Yeah. And it has a really bad effect on you when you're voted, like, the 13th ugliest girl in the entire school and it's posted on a wall. That tends to stick with you and affect your body image. And working on body image therapy and stuff like that. Yeah. And now we've taken more of a focus onto trauma. So working on the eating disorders that I've ended up experiencing my life, different sexual assault cases, and especially when something that you helped me get out of, but a very abusive and toxic relationship that I was in for upwards of a year and a half. Yeah. So breaking that down so I can just be the best version of myself, not just for myself, but for my family, for my new partner, making sure that I'm not reacting about previous situations towards him when they don't involve him. Like paying for sins of others. I don't want him to do that. Yeah. And I don't want myself to do that anymore, too.
I just had to send my husband a quote the other day that said something about, I'm sorry if I cut you while I was healing the wounds that others made or something.
Yeah. That's my favorite thing, too, is admitting that you could have been a bad person at times. And actually, this is a quote that you told me 3 years ago that I have, like, written on my wall at home. Yeah. And it's that a vaccine is toxic to a virus. Yeah. So just because you're toxic to someone doesn't mean you're a bad person. And that was so eye-opening for me to be able to sit back and be like, I am toxic towards you. Yeah. I'm not a bad person, but I'm toxic towards you, so we need to end this relationship now. Yeah. Because I have previous partners that, like, we're not on bad terms. We don't speak to each other anymore. Like, they're in their own relationships. I'm in my own, and that's done there. We are definitely toxic for one another, but we both have care in our hearts for one another, and we're good being separate now because that's what's better for us. Yeah. No, and that's a big part of it, too, is being able to grow as a person without being ashamed of the place you were before you grew.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it sounds like you're in a partnership where you have that space to grow.
Space to grow and encouragement to grow.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's so important.
I will yell from the rooftops how much I love Richard Walker. One of my favorite parts is 3 weeks into us dating. Like 3 weeks in, really early on, usually the talking phase, I was already saying I love you. Like, I was obsessed with this man. He kind of talked to me. He was like, hey, I think you do something without realizing you do it, but I don't like people who lie. And I'm not saying you're lying, but you like to over-exaggerate stories. Can you stop? And no one had ever said that to me because I was trying to overcompensate because if I could do this big smoke show here, you'd look at that and not see the parts of me that were broken. Mm-hmm. And he called me out and no one ever had before, like really in that way and in a healthy way to help me get through it. And now I don't think I've ever been as honest as I am now. Yeah. Like, I pride myself on my honesty. I don't like to over-exaggerate anything. I like to be very truthful about every aspect, even the bad ones, instead of trying to hide the bad shit that happened, try and focus more on the growth and the healing and all of that. And so it's wonderful to have someone that is like, hey, this is a problem. I love you, but you should work on that. And then I can go back to him and be like, hey, I think sometimes you have anger issues. And he's like, all right, I'll work on it. Or someone who listens, understands, and then actually changes behavior is such a vital thing, and it's so rare to find. And if you can at least be that for someone else, it'll find you back.
Yeah, or when you have a relationship where you're each making that other person the best version of themselves for each other. Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. So that's the same type of relationship my husband and I have. Oh, good. Well, and I mean, and I've had to, the past few years have not been easy for me. I've just had to go through a lot of things. I did lose my mom to addiction, and that was really difficult for me. I had my own personal battles that I was fighting. And at the end of the day, I had decided that, I wanted to be more honest. I wanted to be more truthful because I was doing the same thing. I was lying. I call it, or my therapist calls it, the entertainer. Yeah. So the entertainer shows up and is like, hello, and, does all this, and then I'm over here to the side.
Yeah, he would call it my bravado, is what we always call it. Mm-hmm. And that's a good way to kind of separate it out of yourself. Mm-hmm. And we both were guilty of it. I think everyone is to a degree, and part of it is not feeling ashamed that you did it, but recognizing you don't want to do it again. I think is a really big step.
Yeah. Well, and when you make mistakes, owning them and being like, hey, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Like when I worked at the substance abuse center, one of the best things that I used to say to clients, especially ones that had kids, is, the best thing we can teach our children is how to get up after we fall. Mm-hmm. Not that we're going to be perfect and not fail. So, and I always love that. Have you ever done an EMDR?
I thought about it, but I never really branched into that. Part of it is that I have a naturally addictive personality, so part of what I do is kind of like avoid, like I'm not on medication, I'm just kind of like hoping to accept the world as is. I probably do need anxiety meds, but I'm trying to work without it first.
Yeah.
And then some of the other therapy we did, we just never pushed it to anything other than talk therapy.
Okay.
That's kind of where I've stayed mainly, and then like giving me stuff to do like journaling and
I like that.
counteractive thinking, but I never did anything more than that, even though I have debated it.
So I just did my first session of EMDR. I was looking for a way to actually introduce this into the podcast, so this is a great chance because I'm in trauma therapy right now for myself, and I just, as of last Thursday, did my first EMDR session, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing?
Yeah.
EMDR, something like that. But it's where my therapist does something with this and there's tapping, and I reprocessed a very, very difficult memory that I couldn't have talked about before now.
Yeah.
It was actually a memory where I went to an adult and told them that I wasn't safe, and they didn't believe me. Oh, and I was 12.
Awful.
Yeah. And I think that's where I learned to lie.
Yeah.
Because I then took it back because the adult then made it about them. And I couldn't handle that. I felt even less safe than I did before.
Yeah.
And so I ended up just taking it back and lying. And because that made everything better, I think that taught a part of me, like, just lie about who you are and it will all be better.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's sad. I learned that at 12.
It's one of those, like, there's a TikTok trend that's like, you were only 13. And it's a ton of girls going back and thinking about
I'm going to have to look
what
that up.
they were when they were a child. And I think about that all the time. Like when I was 13, I was waking up at 6 in the morning to flat iron my hair poorly. I would always miss the back. But waking up and like putting on makeup to such an extent, flat ironing my hair because I knew that the guys were going to pick on me anyway. So maybe if I did a little bit more, they wouldn't pick on me that day. Maybe I wouldn't be the ugliest girl in the school. But also then just like the first time I was ever groped by a man in public. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's stuff that happened when I was a child, but like the first time I can concretely remember and do actively talk about to let people understand that it's a bad thing that happens was when I was 10 years old. Like I remember that distinctly at school what happened. And then talking to an adult and being told, well, you're maturing more than other women, so what do you expect? Being told that I have to follow a stricter dress code than girls that are smaller than me, because I have more extremities, I'm distracting the male teachers. Like, that's awful. Like,
that's not your fault.
I was a child.
Yeah.
You know? And so then when I got to college, it was like, wait, I don't have rules?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have rules? And then just going out of the way to just fight the rules that weren't even there anymore. So you just get programmed. And I remember growing up not being able to understand my emotions. I would just, like, hold them all in, and then, like, twice a year would just lose my mind. Yeah. I would have like a toddler temper tantrum at school, like screaming, crying, absolutely losing myself because I couldn't process what I was going through properly. And until I was able to remove myself from, that school that I was at and like actually be on my own too. Cause like, I love my parents. I love everyone that raised me. I think they all did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
But there is something about being on your own that lets you process stuff differently.
It does, yeah. Well, you have to be an adult at that point.
Yeah.
Well, so that's what I realized because with my mom passing, my biological father had passed away actually a few weeks before I resigned from UGA. Oh. So, yeah, it was just a couple weeks before. And so I lost both my biological parents in the same year to addiction. And it was a terrifying thing. I mean, I'm not sure where I was going with that other than what were we talking about?
It's kind of like how reprocessing memories.
Yes, reprocessing, yes. And so, and then being out on your own. And so once they both passed away, I suddenly felt very alone. And I called myself an orphan. And I called my sister, I'm like, hey, orphan. Because it's jarring, you know, and I get that we're supposed to naturally outlive our parents, but it's very difficult for me.
It's never exciting to like actually come to grips with that.
No.
It's like I am convinced that my grandparents are going to live forever.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, my Nana is stubborn enough; she's never going to pass. Like, she has stuff to do. Like, I love her. she is my role model. I love Nana Fran. But yeah, like that's a hard thing to come to terms with. The even worse one though is when you realize your parents are humans. That's a weird one.
Yeah.
And like you can see your parents change as people when like you think they'd just be the same your entire lifetime, but they're also allowed to grow and change and go to therapy and fix stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a really weird thing to be like, you are not the same person you were when I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
You're not the same person when I was 15.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a wild concept.
Yeah. Well, and it's weird too, because like the dad who raised me, he ended up dying of cancer. He died when I was 26 or 27. And so it was very jarring to watch someone that you genuinely care about, who raised you, die in that way. And he was all alone, so it was just me and my husband really taking care of him. And it was just the most remarkable thing, though, to see a parent grow and change. And and I think at the end of their lives, if they're fortunate or not fortunate enough to know that the end is coming, that it's really close, that, you know, they could say goodbye. And he had that opportunity, and he was just a different person. Like, it was strange how powerful that is to see that. And I know my girls who you met, you know, who might come barreling in at any moment. I know that they see me growing and changing, you know, and I try to teach them the same thing. The problem with raising girls who are allowed to have opinions is that they then have opinions.
Yeah, I was one of those. It was great.
I forgot that I was one of those too, and now we have two in the house, and my husband's just like, oh my gosh.
Oh, I love that. And it's funny too, like changing in a relationship. Like actually me and Richard were just talking about it like 20 minutes before I showed up. Something that happened when we were first dating that like I kind of pinpointed as something I hadn't healed from. And we both made lots of mistakes when we were first dating. The first 3 months, we like to joke, never actually happened. Because we were just such different people. And like a year later, like my personal style has changed, the way I talk has changed. I'm again so much more honest and like open about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And not open about the stuff I want you to know, but open about everything. Yeah. Just so I can be my full authentic self. And I wouldn't say I'm anywhere near the same person I was. Like I was drinking much more heavily when him and I first got together. I am nowhere near that now. Yeah. I feel healthier as a person, both mentally and physically. Yeah. And we have to not also fault each other for what we were a year ago. Especially if you have apologized and moved on and gotten better.
Well, and at your age, you're changing a lot. Like, you're growing a lot. Like, and in a pandemic.
Yeah, and it's interesting for him to see because he's 7 years older than me, so he's 30, I'm only 23. Yeah. And so there was one part where I was so upset about something, and he just kind of paused. He was like, I do not want this to sound rude. When you turn 25, you're literally going to wake up, and this isn't going to matter to you anymore. Yeah. Like, you're just going to wake up, and everything's going to be different. One day, things will just click, and you'll be fine. And so he has kind of not held my hand, because that is a very patronizing statement, but walked with me through stuff that he's already been through that really is just about aging and maturing.
It is. Yeah, I remember those things. My husband and I, we met at 19. Well, he was 21 and I was 19. And so we did a lot of that growing up together. And luckily, we were close in age. And so, and he actually just turned 40 yesterday.
Aw.
So, so we've grown up together. It's weird to think that he and I have been together longer than we were not.
Yeah, now. That's like, lovely thought. Yeah. Oh my God, I can't wait to get there. I'm only at a year in, so
it really is a comforting thought. Like that, I've lived more of my life with him than not, because he's been the person that pushes me to this. Like so my therapy is in person. For 1 hour on Thursdays, and with his work, he makes a point. He is available. Like, you know, it's a priority for him. You know, all those things are important.
Richard does the same thing. He texts me before and after. He texts me before a therapy session, like, I love you, have a great session. Yeah. And then afterwards calls me, and, like, he said the first time, too, I never have to talk about what I talked about, but he's able to listen to whatever I want to talk about. Yeah. Which is just so wonderful to be able to, like, have days where I'm like, hey, I really don't want to talk about what I talked about. Like, this is kind of a me thing. Yeah. And then other days where I can be like, this is what I worked on, and I think it pertains to you in this way, or I just want you to listen.
Yeah.
So it is lovely to have a partner that supports all sides of you. A true partner doesn't only support the Instagram filter side of you. He doesn't just support the pretty side.
I love that supports all sides of you. Yeah, because that's true. Yeah.
He was actually the one that urged me to find a different therapist too. Because
Good.
we were realizing that I was just hitting a rut, and virtual therapy was awful. I couldn't connect well with it. I need that like in-person energy, and then I was always just worried someone would be listening in.
Yeah.
That I just couldn't talk freely, and it was just only like online therapy, which I understood during the pandemic that was a must. But then it hit a point where I was like, I need to be in person, otherwise this isn't going to help.
Yeah.
And so we ended up finding a therapist together. He helped research. I researched too. Found a new therapist that I've been seeing since January.
Oh, yeah.
And he has been so helpful. And like it's a nice way to reprocess stuff too.
Yeah.
Because my other therapist was my therapist during an abusive relationship that I didn't talk about. And that's really hard to talk about something that happened after the fact with your therapist who didn't fully know what was going on during it.
Yeah.
It's easier to talk about with someone who didn't know you during that time.
Yeah.
Just you can fully talk about it and not feel like you have to backtrack and make it make sense or make it feel valid.
Yeah, or you almost have to, you almost feel like you want to apologize to them for not telling them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like,
It's a
hey, I
weird
kind of
thing.
cheated on you.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but then at the same time, it's like, how did no one notice, you know?
Yeah. Well, because I knew something was wrong when you were in school, just because, I mean, you would come in kind of erratic and stuff. And I don't say that in a difficult way. But.
Oh, no, I would say I was. At that point, I was sleeping maybe 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
On average, 3 hours when I was lucky, and like just taking naps, random times to sleep. That was just an awful relationship where like, I don't fault myself for a ton of it. I do have fault in everything because like, and someone who was abused should never feel like they are to blame.
Yeah.
But you also can recognize parts of you that were not great for that.
Yeah.
And I was with someone who, we were not good for each other, but he also is a special sort of something.
Yeah.
And it was just a lot of regulating who I was and trying to mold myself around someone who was forcing me to be a certain way. And was very good at psychology and understood how to manipulate me in not the best way. So like
narcissist.
Oh, absolute narcissist. Grade A, narcissistic personality disorder. He, and untreated, because we did talk about he should see therapy, and he told me to go look in a mirror. And I was like, I'm already seeing a therapist. But no, like that was like telling me, like putting me in front of a mirror, stripping me naked. And when I was barely sexually active at the time before meeting him, like I dated one person that I did stuff with, like nothing else. And grabbing chunks of me and like pushing them and jiggling them after I'd said that I had body dysmorphia and an eating disorder and saying things like, this is beautiful, don't lose it. Knowing that in my head I'm seeing him like grip something and pushing it out of my body.
Yeah.
So like I want to chop it off. Like I had to sit there with like kitchen scissors and not do something.
Yeah.
Stopping my sleep, making it seem like the only way I could see this person was if I was sexual with him. Like that was like my payment for love and for kindness. And I don't understand it too, because neither one of us were sleeping well. We were both just absolute messes, but I didn't feel like I could leave because we lived in the same building.
Yeah.
So it's hard, and it's one of those things where you have to really work on and process. And I'm actually about to reopen that with my therapist when he gets back in town.
Yeah.
Because we hadn't really got into too much detail. I told Richard kind of everything that happened, like what's important and why I can be kind of messed up sometimes. But I really want to go back into it with my therapist, because there's also this one important thing that I never admitted, but it's the shame that you can feel for loving someone who hurt you.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to work on, is actually talking about what happened and being able to admit where I went wrong, and then why do I feel ashamed and why I shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, because, we can love people that hurt us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, my dad, who, the one I talked to you about, who raised me, who, he died of cancer, he had made mistakes. Like, he'd made some big ones, ones that he could have gone to jail for.
Yeah.
And I, through a lot of things, decided that I wasn't going to judge people based on their worst mistakes. And I decided that really young, and I kept that mantra up. and I'm really glad that I did in certain scenarios, but it cost me something.
Yeah.
It cost me a part of me, and I've never heard anyone say that what you just said, which was, feel that shame for loving someone that hurt us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird concept to get over and to really process. And also just to not have this fear that they're going to come back into your life and harm you. Mm-hmm. Like, I still look over my shoulder to see if that is the person. I don't even think he lives in Georgia anymore. I have no idea what happened. We blocked each other on everything. Like, that's done. But still that fear that he's going to hear me talk about something and then somehow find a way back into my life. Mm-hmm. And it can be hard to separate yourself out, even if you are 3 years removed. Because still, words that people say can stick with you forever.
Yes.
But it's important to try and separate it out, and that's one thing I try and work on, especially with that situation, because it was just a lot of mess. And a lot of trying to figure out who I was and then not being able to, because I was trying to be good enough to be in a relationship, good enough to feel loved back, but being told that I was never going to be good enough to be loved.
Yeah.
And that can harm someone.
That can really hurt, yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you don't feel like you are attractive enough or a good enough person or doing enough, but then also doing too much and being told to stop being who you are and then you'll be a perfect partner.
Yes.
They're not going to be a good partner to you. Mm-mm. That's like a grade A sign. Leave.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the talks that we had were like almost like a lifeline for me to staying afloat.
Yeah.
Because I was being just pushed to every extreme of self-harm and eating disorders. Like my anorexia was awful. Mm-hmm. I could not eat in front of this person. I would definitely just cut my plate and make it look like I was eating.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then just doing things I'm not proud of. Because I thought I needed to do that to win someone's affection. You shouldn't win anyone's affection.
No, you don't need it. Yeah, they're not a prize to be won. Yeah.
No, and even trying to spin it and being like, oh, I earned the love and support.
Yeah.
No,
Let me turn this off.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
Why it's doing that. I knew something was going to happen in the middle of filming, and I had to do something. But, all right, let's see. I can get it. I can almost get it.
You've got it.
No, I can't reach it. Okay.
Did you need me to reach it?
No. I was going to have you do it, but I can get it over here. I just have to touch this. We're okay. I just don't want it to appear on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Okay. All right. We're good. Okay. Okay, it's got those logos. We're fine. It's just got virtual. Okay. Okay, here we go.
But yeah, it's like you can't earn a person and you can't deserve love because that implies entitlement. Mm-hmm. And you shouldn't be entitled to stuff like that. There are things that everyone should have. Mm-hmm. Like, you as a person should have a living wage. You should have love. You should have friendship. You should have clean water. You should have equal rights, all that stuff. But saying you deserve someone else to love you does take away that free will and that sense of entitlement versus saying every person should be loved. Is different. That's a call to action. That's go love someone. Because you can't make someone love you, and you also can't make someone date you.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing. And I feel like the culture has almost dropped a little. I'm very fortunate to be dating someone that is very firm on the chivalry and first dates. We met on a dating app, and the first thing he said to me was, I am sick and tired of talking to someone for 2 weeks, not knowing where I stand, them dating a ton of people, me dating a ton of people, and then it just turning into nothing. He's like, if we're going to be a thing, I'm not going to talk to anyone else. I'm only going to date you. I'm not going to go on dates with anyone else. It is just you until we decide to continue or we decide to not do it. Also, I'm taking you out to coffee because I don't believe in the Netflix and chill. And I was like, I love you.
Yes.
And
I'm so glad that Netflix wasn't around when I was dating.
Oh, yeah, no. Those are awful dates. They're terrible.
Yeah. I mean, even just, we would rent Blockbuster and do it, and it was still,
No, it's not an awesome thing. And I'm not saying you have to go out and do something extravagant as a date, but just putting in care instead of just inviting someone over with an idea in mind that you're going to be physical together.
Yeah.
Because that isn't the root of a relationship. And I was trained to think it was. This person had said something to me that really stuck with me for a while, something I'm trying to unlearn, which is that I was his Pavlov's dog. That was a very shocking thing to hear. And then also that they wanted to see how far they could push the human psyche before it could break, and I can go pretty damn far.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where I should have been like, I should leave this person. And I continued to date them for like 6 months after that. Because I was just trained to the point to think that no one else would love me. But this person at least is speaking to me, so I think I need to stay, and I need this person to feel like a whole person. Well, I don't even view Richard as like my better half. I think that's such a difficult way to view it. I view him as a complementary part. That we're two lines that are parallel together forever, gonna keep growing together, but we don't have to be intertwined to be whole.
No. Well, and I think that's the thing is like you grow, you spend your life with someone like next to them, like, and you agree to face the world in a partnership.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, but yeah, you're not agreeing to like, yeah. I think of it like that yin yang symbol.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of almost like that. But at times, like you can shift who's doing what.
You're allowed to be independent and still be together.
Yeah.
Like I spend every waking moment with this man. We always joke about the fact that after 3 dates together, like we never spent a day without each other. And our entire year-long relationship, we spent 3 nights away from each other at most.
Oh, yeah, y'all just celebrated a year, right?
We did.
Yeah,
we just
congrats.
did a year. We celebrated July 10th, 11th, and 12th because that's the day we matched online, the day we started texting, and then our first actual date, which is a 2-part date. Yeah, he's amazing. Like, our first date, we had coffee in the morning, then we both went to work, and then he called me and was like, hey, I'm not done talking to you, and I want to take you out again. And we went out that night, which was lovely.
I love that. That's so fun.
He's wonderful. And he's always, like, been firm the entire relationship that he is here to support me and be with me, but I am my own woman.
Yeah.
And we just have to, again, we have, like, the restraints of the relationship. We have our rules, like, we do not lie to one another. That is an absolute rule, no lying. Of course, no cheating. We're very obsessed with each other, that's it. And then also that we're going to support and love each other and let each other make mistakes, but still stay together. Yeah. And I love it. And we found out that day, too, that we have the same birthday, so that's how we know we're soulmates.
That's crazy.
Yeah, May 30th, 1991 and 1998.
That's awesome. That is neat.
Yeah, he ID'd me when I told him it was May 30th. He was like, show me your ID. And I was like, excuse me? Like, I swear I'm allowed to drink.
Yeah, did he? Because
he had no idea. He was so confused. It was awesome. And yeah, we spent no less than 3 nights away from each other. Like, we just hated that.
Yeah.
I think we moved in way too early. Like, I was basically living at his house a month into the relationship.
Yeah, me and my husband too.
Yeah, and then 4 months into us dating, he actually asked me to move in, and I told my roommates, and they were like, yeah, we haven't seen you here once. You moved your stuff in and then never stayed over a single night. What's funny is he even moved me into that house too, and then had to move me out of that house and into his house, and then into another house just 6 months later. So we wanted a space that was just ours, you know?
Yeah. Which is nice.
Space.
Yeah. So you've been there a couple months now.
We've been there since the end of May.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, and it's finally starting to look the way I want it to, which is always fun. And now I'm like this like suburban mom DIY persona. Yeah. Like everything's in a jar, which he hates. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
We have a jar for everything.
Yeah.
I think it looks so pretty.
Yeah. I've had to learn. So my husband is very minimalist. So like, we had a fight for years about what would be on the coffee table, and now we don't have a coffee table. Yeah, because we just couldn't agree. So,
I like it.
Yeah, he's very minimalist, and I've learned to appreciate that. No, this house actually, this fireplace. That's actually why I wanted to do the filming in front of it. Is when I came to this house and saw this fireplace, I was like, "This is our house." And my husband, of course, you know, is kind of like shushing me because the real estate agent's right there. And I'm like, no, this is our house.
Yeah.
Like, I'm already moving things in my head. Like, I don't care. I'm not being coy anymore.
It's so similar to our relationship. So we don't have like fights over specific things or like arguments. Mm-hmm. He just is very firm that he gets control over how the TV and entertainment stuff looks, which I could care less about.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, then I get to help design everything else. So I got to go thrifting for everything. I got little porch furniture. I got a liquor cabinet. I have the bar set up. I have a whole library area. And he's like, I want the TVs this way and LED lights for my gaming room. Yep. I'm like, that's fine. Like, I can do anything else.
Set up the lovely lights.
It's so cute. I like it. Yeah. He's going to have to steal that when he sees it. He's going to love it.
Yeah, it's really awesome. They're a little bit pricey, but I love them. So he actually has them tied to the music system that's in here. I could not tell you how it works, as was obvious by my technical issues a minute ago. But he has it all set up. And we have speakers downstairs that are synced so that I can walk outside of the basement to the outside room, and I can still hear the song.
Because it's on the same speakers.
You're giving him way too many ideas for what we're going to do eventually.
Oh, yeah. No, it's half our lights in this house are those Philips LED lights.
Ooh, nice.
So like they're controlled. So he'll say, like when we were watching Georgia games, he'll say something like, "Okay, Google, turn the lights Georgia" or something, and they'll go like red and dark colored.
That's all he wants. He has this little like LED light strip around his computer now that's bright purple, his favorite color. Awesome. And that's all he wants. And like that's not my style, but I don't care that much about it, so he can have fun with all of that. I just want everything else to be nice, and I want as many jars as I want in the house. This is a very common argument that we have is can it be put in a jar, and why do I have so many? Also, the stupid coffee mugs I find. I collect specifically soup mugs, which are coffee mugs with soup recipes on them that are all awful. We've tried to make the recipes, and they're disgusting every time.
I'm going to have to find you some, but this is a good segue because I did get you a thank you gift.
Aw!
So it's a pineapple because, my logo has pineapples in it. It has 3 pineapples. But it's a diamond one, I guess. You can make it. So, yep.
I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We'll have to do that together. We've been doing our date night that we do like without going out is every night we either like color something together or play a game together. So we've been playing a lot of chess.
Oh, I love that.
Which is me losing a lot of chess. I also hate the fact this is the first time I've ever dated anyone smarter than me. And it's awful in the best possible way.
I agree.
Yeah. This morning he left the house by saying, "Get better at chess." So we'll have to do that together, and maybe I'll win this time finally.
My husband can best me at most things, but I can literally skate circles around him on roller skates. It's because, of course, I'm so much shorter. And then he got a dartboard recently, and conveniently, though, we haven't played since the 2 times I beat him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because I slaughtered him. We were playing 301, which is where you go down to 301, and you have to get the exact score. And I would look at it, and then I would kind of make a face like, "Oh, I'm not going to get it," and I'd get the 19 or whatever I needed, and I would be like, "Oh!" And he would just have this look like,
See, I can't do any of that, and he knows he can best me in all things physical. So he used to do MMA and wrestling, and so occasionally I'll be like, "Put him up," just joking, and go to take him down, and he just with one arm will stop me and be like, "Now I'm going to show you this move," and just throws me in the air, and it's lovely. It's so much fun, but also I know the look in his face. It's I'm going to make sure to not hurt you, but we are going to be throwing each other on the bed real quick.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. It's also nice, too, going back to something we talked about, being scared to be physical with someone, because, there was a lot of physical aggression there, too. And then now my future husband can just throw me on the bed and be like, "I'm going to flip you real quick," and I'm fine. And I don't flinch anymore. And it's such a nice feeling to, little things like that to have grown from.
Well, I've had similar issues where my husband can, although he doesn't yell often, I can count on one hand how many times he's yelled.
Yeah.
When he does yell, I can handle it a little bit better than how I used to. Yeah, I don't cower. Yeah. I still often get triggered, but I can say, "Hey," now, and this is only recently, this is only the past few months, I've actually been able to say, "Hey, I'm being triggered. This is what's going on." Because I didn't realize how much I was being triggered day to day. Did you have that too, where you would be triggered at home, versus being out, or is yours more social anxiety?
It's kind of all of it. So I have a lot of self-validation struggles. I struggle to view myself as a whole person, or as a good person, or someone worthy of love. I talk all this stuff, and I am trying to practice what I preach to. And so I'd find myself just having fears that he would leave me. Because everyone always had. I had this awful breakup right before him and I met, because we met 2 months after this, where the person just sent me every hurtful thing he could think of. That I was too insecure, and that's why no one was going to love me. That's why he cheated on me. That's why he was leaving me. Putting all the blame on who I was as a person. So I just thought that everyone would leave and no one would love me. I just didn't think it was possible. And so I would find myself having these spiraling moments, is what Richard calls it, where I would just start with, he had a different tone than he did yesterday, and I would end with, so therefore he's breaking up with me.
Yep.
And so it's funny, I don't even have to say you're triggering me, he knows it. So he'll be talking to me, and he'll see me start spiraling and be like, "Hey, I know you like to talk until you feel better. that's not what's going to happen. I know you. You're just going to spiral and feel worse. So can we cut this off at the source?
Yeah.
And I love repetition too. So I'll ask him how much, like, I'll be like, you love me. And he'll be like, yeah, I love you a lot. And like 20 minutes later, I'm like, but you love me. And he's like, yeah, I love you a lot. And then 30 minutes later, I'm like, because you love me. And he's like, okay, you get one more of these.
Yeah.
And so he limits me to make sure that I don't just let myself spiral.
Yeah.
And in the moment, I'm like, screw you. But then a little bit later, I'm like, no, he's just smart. He's good at this.
Yeah. I know. I get really mad when, like, when we're in that moment, that emotional moment, and, like, we just want to yell or whatever, and they're, like, being all rational, and I'm like, don't use logic with me.
He's so logical, and it's wonderfully awful.
I know.
Yeah. And I'll never, I think part of it, too, is, like, something that I've noticed that I've grown with is when we were first together, like, we would argue, but he never yells. He does not yell, and if I start raising my voice without realizing it, because I can just get very passionate, he's like, don't yell at me. We love to say, too, like, if I had said this to you, how would you feel? As kind of like a, hey, let's not do that again to each other thing.
Oh, I like that.
But I used to, whenever it'd be in arguments, I'd start backing up because previous people used to back me into corners. So I would start backing up in defense, and I remember very distinctly, before he even knew what happened to me, kind of paused and was like, you know I'm not going to hurt you. And I was like, I don't know that. And I don't think I will know that. And now I do know that. I know he's never going to attempt to hurt me. It is never in his goal to harm me physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, none of that. He wants to make sure I'm okay. And so now I don't back down. I'm able to stand up for myself. I didn't really have a spine before I met him. I had a fake one. I acted like I was this confident person who was great at everything. I had no backbone at all. Yeah. And I'm still working on it, but, you know. That's a lot better.
That's what I found. So with my EMDR experience last week, I would say that that's one of the things I've gained back is my spine, my backbone. Yeah. Like I told my husband recently that it's like someone took my spine out and it's been gone. And I don't know where it is and I can't find it and I don't know where to start because I don't know where it went, you know?
Yeah. Which is a scary thing to kind of realize.
It is. It really is.
Or realizing you never actually had one at all. Because I don't think I ever had a backbone. I don't think I ever had the ability.
It was fake.
Yeah. So not even just getting one back, but rebuilding it slowly and slowly.
An authentic one.
Yeah. And I remember he at one point was like, hey, you stand up to me and only me. Please stand up to other people in your life too. Like, I'm glad you stand up to me. And not always because, like, you're telling me I'm wrong sometimes. And, like, that's never fun to hear. But, like, if you're going to have a backbone with me, you can have it with your boss. You can have it with the random person you're selling to. You can have it with your friends, your family, all of that. It can't just be with one person. Yeah. And I was like, that's hard, but I'll do it. Yeah. And it's kind of nice to have someone that does point out things that you can grow on, but not say you're wrong for doing it or need to change, but just like, I don't think you notice this. And I do the same exact thing to him. And then giving me, and I give him too, a safe space to actually grow. Yeah. And ways to fix things that aren't just quick bandages.
So it sounds like you have found someone that lets you figure out on any given moment, any given day, who you are.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and that's powerful. Yeah.
It's nice to feel like I would be heartbroken if we weren't together forever. If some like meteor came out of the sky and hit him, because we know we're never going to leave each other. I'd be devastated, but I could still feel like a person that could exist and live. Like I wouldn't feel like my life was ended in that moment. The love of my life would be over, but like that, my life isn't over. And it's a nice feeling to know that he's not my personality. He's just a partner of mine. And that's not something I've ever felt before. I always felt like I was conjoined at the hip and tied to this persona.
Yeah, that's what codependency does to us. Yep.
Which is not a good place to ever be in. And I wish I had listened to people telling me that I probably just shouldn't be in that relationship. I can't tell you how many times people were like, don't put a due date on when you have to break up. Just do it. Yeah. If you say you're going to break up in a month, just do it that day. Yeah. Like, what is it going to kill you? And I wish I could go back and tell 18-year-old me that I was going to meet Richard one day. Because I don't think I would have done anything that I did in those 4 years. I don't think I would have been with the awful people, put up with any of the things that happened to me. Yeah. It would have changed a lot. But you can't know that.
Well, and didn't you need that awful stuff to know how good he is?
I guess that is part of it, yeah. And he always says too, like, if he could go back in time, even if it would prevent us from meeting, he would stop any of that from happening to me. Yeah. Which is so lovely to hear. But like, yeah, it did make me into a different person, a more humble person, I'd say too. Because like, I try not to be full of myself anymore. Sometimes I'm not great at that, but I really actively try to remain more on the humble side. Yeah. And kind of figure myself out more. Like, it takes... Sometimes trauma can be helpful, but I wish no one had to go through trauma to be a better person.
Yeah,
you know?
Me too. I wish there were other ways around it. But sometimes we just have to go through it.
Yeah, and honestly, it's just more self-reflecting. I wish I could have self-reflected without there being an incident that caused me to self-reflect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that kind of feels like a natural ending point. We didn't talk much about kindness, but I did enjoy our conversation.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to have you back on. I would love to do that.
Me too.
I know, because we need to have more conversations like this.
Absolutely. I can tell you, too, when I was in 6th grade, I actually gave a lecture to my class because I asked the teacher if I could talk because I was that kid.
Yeah.
About the difference between being nice and being kind.
Ooh, tell me.
So my mom actually taught me this, so shout out to my mama, Chris. But being kind is it's like removing the cameras. Would you do it without a camera being pointed at you? Well, nice is showmanship. Nice is, I did this so you could see how nice I am. Well, kindness is just something you do naturally, and you don't care if people see. So I remember there were some points in my life where I was more nice than kind, where you give a homeless person a granola bar and then you tell someone that you gave a homeless person a granola bar, but did you give it to that person because you should have, or did you give it because you wanted people to know how good you were?
Yeah.
And so it's that difference. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be fake nice to everyone to be a kind person. No, you're allowed to have people that you do not get along with. Treat them with kindness by being respectful and being blunt. But you don't have to fake niceties to be a good person.
You don't, yeah.
So it's a very interesting concept, too, about being natural versus synthetic.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, well, good. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. I've really missed you.
I know, you too. Well, we're going to talk more, but we're going to let you go. And as always, pineapple with care, guys.